economic policy when they overruled his tariff policy. So he's got to really step up this evening. Now, the message that he gives will be the message that the Republicans will take into the midterm elections later this year. He will talk about affordability. He'll talk about how he's making things cheaper for Americans. The problem he's got, of course, is that he promised prices would come down on day one of his presidency, and here we are more than a year in, and many people aren't feeling that benefit. A point that was highlighted by Democratic Senator Elisa Slotkin when I spoke to her just a short time ago. Senator, can we quickly ask what you expect to hear from the hearing from the President this evening?
In general, I think he's going to try and distract us from the fact that he hasn't done enough on the economy.
He'll obviously tout the administration's accomplishments over the past year, and he will, of course, lay out a very ambitious agenda, I think, for the working people of this country to make America more affordable and prosperous and safe and make the American dream more attainable. So it's going to be a great speech, and we hope that everybody will tune in.
Caroline Levitt, Donald Trump's press secretary there, giving us a brief insight into what Donald Trump might be talking about. Trump himself says this is going to be a long speech, but he'll be looking at the polls and realizing that his own personal approval rating is way down. His approval rating of the handling of immigration is way down. His approval rating on the handling of the economy is way down. So this has to be a big speech. Now, a lot of State of the Union speeches are, well, we thought he'd say that, okay, he's going to do that, but will he actually deliver? He realizes this might be a long speech, but it's got to be an impactful speech and got to make American voters think that they'd still be better off sticking with Trump and the Republicans come the midterms.
Alan Fisher there for us, Capitol Hill. Now, the largest aircraft carrier in the United States Navy, the USS Gerald R. Ford, has docked at a NATO base on the Greek island of Crete as it heads towards the Middle East. The US has been increasing its military presence as tension remains high between Washington and Tehran. Donald Trump's repeatedly threatened military action on Iran if a deal isn't reached on its nuclear program. The White House says Trump's first option is always diplomacy. Iranian and US officials are preparing to hold a third round of talks in Geneva later this week. Meanwhile, Iran's Revolutionary Guard has been conducting military drills in the south of the country. The exercises are aimed at testing the readiness of Iranian forces in the event of an attack. The Revolutionary Guard says it built a strong fortress in the area, and that does come as Iran's most senior security official is expected to visit Muscat to meet Omani authorities. Ali Larijani is the head of the Supreme National Security Council. The visit comes ahead of the next round of nuclear talks, which are set for Geneva on Thursday. President Masoud Pezeshkian has warned Iran will not bow down to US pressure as Washington bolsters its military presence in the region. Meanwhile, Iran's deputy foreign minister says Tehran is ready to take any necessary steps to reach a deal with the US, as Tawhid Asadi reports now.
The latest development is the reports that are coming about the possibility of Ali Larijani, Iran's secretary for the National Security Council, paying a visit, and now we have sources close to him saying that most probably he is paying a visit to Muscat, and that is critically important, at least from two perspectives. First, the role that he plays in this entire trajectory of diplomatic interaction between Iran and the United States, and previously he also paid a visit to Muscat, and that is indicative of the very fact that not just the government but the political establishment to which Ali Larijani is quite close is supporting this interaction when it comes to the ties between and the interactions between Iran and the United States. The public mood in Iran is a mixture of different sentiments, and I can say sort of oscillation between fear of the war in terms of the military build-up by the Americans in the region and hopes, rays of hope for diplomacy and in respect of the ongoing interactions between the two sides. Meanwhile, we have to also keep in mind that there is this public dissatisfaction. Earlier in December, we saw massive protests taking place in the country, initially driven by the economic hardship, but right now we also hear sounds echoing sort of dissatisfaction in political and social spheres over the past 3 days, at least, in some major universities in the capital and across the country, including Sharif University, Shahid Beheshti, University of Tehran.
Anti-government protests have taken place in universities across Iran for a fourth day. Students have clashed with pro-government supporters in Tehran. Several schools postponed classes after days of demonstrations. Students have been chanting anti-government slogans and commemorating classmates killed in recent nationwide protests. Those ended in a violent crackdown by security forces last month. The government says students have the right to demonstrate but must comply with the law.
We believe that university students are active and naturally have the right to protest. They have wounds in their hearts and have seen scenes that may upset and anger them. This anger is understandable, but we must know that we all have a duty to understand the red lines. Sacred things and the flag are two examples of these red lines that we must protect and not cross or deviate from, even at the height of anger.
This is Al Jazeera, a reminder of our top stories. Ukraine is marking 4 years since Russia launched its full-scale invasion. European leaders joined Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at a memorial in Kyiv in a show of solidarity. US President Donald Trump is set to deliver his first official State of the Union address since returning to the White House. He's expected to use the speech to outline the results of his first year in office. The largest aircraft carrier of the United States Navy, the USS Gerald R. Ford, has docked at a NATO base on the Greek island of Crete. It's heading toward the Middle East as tension remains high between Washington and Tehran. Now, Mexico remains on high alert after a wave of reprisal attacks triggered by the killing of its most wanted cartel leader. Thousands of troops have been deployed to the western state of Jalisco to maintain order. But President Claudia Sheinbaum says the country is now at peace and life is returning to normal.
Today there was no school, but tomorrow activities are expected to return to normal. In the Guadalajara airport, practically all flights have already resumed. And in Puerto Vallarta, little by little, things are returning to normal.
Meanwhile, John Holman is in Guadalajara and has this.
This truck is just one of the vehicles that was torched by the Jalisco New Generation cartel after Mexican security forces killed its leader, Nemesio Oseguera El Mencho, this Sunday. And there's vehicles like this one that are dotted around where we are, Guadalajara, which is the capital city of Jalisco state, which is a real epicenter of the cartel. And they weren't just torched, a lot of them were dragged across the road to cause what's called here narco bloqueos, narco roadblocks, which is basically the cartel doing that in this instance to show their anger that the leader had been captured. But it didn't just happen here in Guadalajara or in this state, Jalisco. The Mexican government said that there was more than 250 narco blockades in 20 states of the country. So that's vast swathes of Mexico that were affected after El Mencho was killed. And what that tells you is the real reach of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, its manpower and its resources. Right now, that's been brought under control. These lorries and vehicles have been dragged off the roads. You can probably see that traffic is moving along most of the roads now in Mexico. But it is a worry going forward because now this organization, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, is leaderless. And with all of those resources, with all of those manpower, the worry is that there will be a secession battle, that other people will try and step in to try and take up that leadership, and that might lead to even more conflict. So that's something definitely on the mind of the people here in Guadalajara, Jalisco state, but also probably on the mind of the Mexican government now as they get to grips with the fact that the initial surge of violence might have gone, but there might be more troubles ahead. John Holman, Al Jazeera, Guadalajara, Mexico.
A new wave of border skirmishes have taken place between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The UN says 13 civilians have been killed in fighting which started this week. Afghan officials say the latest flare-up happened along the border between the two countries. Reports say the violence is still ongoing. It threatens a fragile ceasefire that began after battles in October killed dozens of soldiers on both sides. It was the worst fighting between the neighbors since the Taliban took over Kabul in 2021. Growing insecurity in the Sahel region across Central Africa has resulted in tighter border controls and restrictions on trade corridors. And that's led to shortages of essential goods and other foodstuffs in countries affected by the violence. Markets in northern Nigeria have been trying to fill the gap, sometimes at great cost for cross-border traders. Emma Idris reports from a wholesale market in Nigeria's Kano state.
From Kano's markets, a steady flow of goods move north, quietly sustaining countries cut off by conflict, sanctions, and tighter border controls. An estimated 50 trucks leave here with grain, fuel, and basic medicines to Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Chad every day, while shortages and price hikes have become routine.
Nigerians buy from the market, but most of the agricultural produce and other essential goods here are exported mainly to these countries.
Across the Sahel, military coups, insurgency, and economic pressure have disrupted formal trade routes. Borders are harder to cross, and insecurity makes travel riskier. Traders and transporters say getting the supplies out is only half the battle.
There are certain places you can't travel at night. In conflict zones, security personnel don't allow that. We have lost a lot of goods and trucks on these routes.
Despite sanctions, closed borders and conflict, trade here carries on. It's driven by necessity. What happens here keeps millions alive in landlocked countries and countries across the Sahel and beyond.
Kano, northern Nigeria's commercial hub, has long been a lifeline to the Sahel and to faraway countries like Central African Republic, thanks to informal networks built over decades. The Wanao market plays a critical role in the supply chain. Officials say the market doesn't only supply essential goods, it also provides employment to hundreds of Western Central Africans every day. For those living in fragile Sahelian towns and border communities, every bag of grain or carton of medicine that leaves Dawano is a small victory against hunger and isolation. But if the roads close completely, the cost won't just be measured in money, but in lives. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Kano, Nigeria.
Heavy rain overnight has added to the misery of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza, braving winter in makeshift camps. Floodwaters have pooled into muddy puddles around tents torn by the bad weather. Palestinians are using pots to bail out the water, while they're also struggling to find food and firewood. Israel, meanwhile, is still restricting the entry of humanitarian aid, despite a ceasefire deal in October. Many of the tents have been flooded several times, bringing new threats, including waterborne illnesses and hypothermia.
We are tired. My daughters inside are drenched. Our clothes are drenched. We cannot do anything for ourselves. Where are the good people? Where are the people who pray to God and honor the holy month of Ramadan to come help us? Find us a solution. We are so tired beyond your imagination. I swear, we are tired of our current situation. Have mercy on us, O Lord.
Ian Khudri visited a tented camp in Gaza City and sent this report on the conditions Palestinians are facing during this holy month of Ramadan.
The situation in the Gaza Strip remains catastrophic. We're in one of the makeshift camps in Gaza, and most of these Palestinians are still living in tarps, in worn out tents, and this is because no aid is entering. Most of the aid that is entering the Gaza Strip is restricted. Palestinians are saying that they do not have access to it. It's not only the fact that aid is not entering, but also Israel continues violating the ceasefire, continues to kill Palestinians, and there are thousands of Palestinians that need to travel abroad for medical treatment and evacuation are being denied. Now, thousands of those Palestinians are homeless because they do not have any houses to return to, as the Israeli forces destroyed most of their houses. This is the scene in the Gaza Strip today, and despite the fact that there is ceasefire, and as the situation remains like this, unlivable, the result is going to be ethnic cleansing. Hind al-Khudri, Al Jazeera, Gaza, Palestine.